Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Inside Indian Athletics. And tonight we finally, after a couple weeks of waiting and trying to figure this one out, we have our first golf season recap. We've already talked to a couple golf players this year, but tonight we get into at least one of the coaches, if not both. We'll be joined by boys head coach Cody Reynolds, and we'll hope to be joined by the girls coach MaryAnn Kolda. But when we come back, we'll first be joined by Coach Reynolds, and we'll be back in a moment.
Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm back with another video. I'm gonna teach you guys how to throw football.
Whoa. That was hard to watch. Not only the audio is bad, but the video quality too. If your internet looks like this, look no further. Whisper Internet is the best internet provider in Muscoda, Illinois and beyond. So switch today. If interested, head down to 9711 Fuster Road, Muscoda, Illinois, or call at 1-800-765-7772. Whisper. Service is our passion. Internet is what we do.
All right, we're joined by Indians boys head golf coach Cody Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, what drew you to Muscoda? What made you choose to come here?
I mean, the easy answer I could say is my wife. She's from this area. So I started my teaching and coaching up in Northern Illinois, and time came where I was just looking for something new, looking for a new challenge, and whenever at the time, there was a head basketball opening down here, and the teaching position was great. I knew the school had great reputation, and had heard nothing but great things about it. So whenever it seemed like everything just aligned perfectly and worked out, the timing is right to come down here, and I've loved it ever since. So.
All right. Did you start coaching basketball right away, or was that something that developed over time?
That was right from the get-go. So I've been around it always, like my whole life. I say, like, my dad coached for 35 years or so, I think, in Illinois as a high school coach. So, I was the kid in the gym. As soon as I could walk, I was around practices for him, and it was just always kind of natural to me. And I figured out pretty quickly that that's something that I wanted to do once I started my teaching career, and just seeing the impact he had on kids throughout his career, and seeing it over the years and being around it, I knew it was something I wanted to get into. So, started off, I've been everything from freshman to JV to varsity to everything in between. But yeah, that was definitely something that was a passion from early on for me.
All right. Outside of coaching, how did you find the game of golf and develop that love?
So that was kind of the summer high school job route. Where I grew up, we had a golf resort like probably 2 miles from our house, and that became the summer job, and fell in love with it there, and started playing obviously all through middle school, high school, worked there all through college, and whenever I started teaching, I was an assistant for a year at the first school I was at. Came down here and gave that up and focused just on basketball, and then lo and behold, down the road it opened up here, and was something I was happy to jump at whenever it became available.
All right. How were you approached about becoming the new head golf coach? Obviously, Coach Hinkle had been here for a long time. How did that come about?
Yeah, so he and I had talked about it. As he kind of knew when his career was going to be winding down, and he was going to be finishing things up, and so we had some discussions. Whenever it was his last 3 or 4 years, we had, there were some days where they would have a varsity match, and his assistant maybe like they needed an extra guy to kind of help out. So I had gone out to some practices with them and with the team, and been around here and there just whenever he needed somebody. And we just felt like it was an easy transition. And talking with Mr. Battis, whenever it became available, he knew. I let him know right away that it was something I'd be interested in. I mean, he knew I was passionate about it, and it was a smooth transition, I think, so with all that involved.
All right, your first golf season 3 years ago, you inherited a lot of good talent. You didn't have any seniors that first year, so they gave you a couple years to really start to develop a really good program. So, what was that? How was that? How did that make the transition to start coaching golf?
I think it was a good setup. We were fortunate to have a lot of talent. I knew that Jacob Floric, that was back when he was just a sophomore, which seems forever ago now at this point. But like you said, we had no seniors, and so it was an interesting mix. Though several of those guys had a lot of varsity experience from the year before, despite them being so young, and so. To have that mix was nice, you knew you had some talent coming in, and we were going to be able to have some success, which always helps. But being able to have them when they're young and really kind of be able to build some things that we wanted to do, and some things we wanted to start, I guess you could say, it was nice to have them, and it was such a good group. They were receptive to everything. Very coachable, great kids. But yeah, it was a great starting point I was fortunate to have.
I want to go back to that basketball a little bit. How did you balance that basketball and golf for the couple years? You know, you're busy over half the year.
It's long days for sure, but I think there's some tough times always. You know, you get to, especially with basketball, you know, you hit kind of the wall in like the last 2 weeks of January, that first week of February. It's just kind of like the dog days of the season. But you know, from being around it for so long, like, you know, I was obviously very familiar with that schedule and that kind of grind that you get into. You know, golf season is it's the shortest season there is, but it is the most, you know, kind of intense from a time-consuming, you know, part of things. Because obviously, you know, 18-hole matches and tournaments, you know, you might be out there for 5 hours, 6 hours, depending on, you know, the tournament and just how pace of play is and stuff. But it's long days. You know, again, like my wife is awesome. She's always been an awesome coach's wife. I mean, you know her, but I mean, she's very supportive, always has been, and you know, stuff like, you know, as far as having things taken care of at home, like she's always been outstanding with helping me out, and she's obviously a huge fan of, you know, all the teams here. But you know, whenever I was coaching, she loves getting out to golf matches when she can, and you know, basketball games, she's at as many as she could get to always. So you know, that certainly helps. But yeah, it's just you get into that routine and that daily habit, and it just goes from there.
All right, stay basketball. What was your favorite moment in basketball for however many years you coached?
There's a lot to choose from. I would say, I mean, probably one of the best ones, especially here, was the year we made it to the sectional championship game, made it to the Sweet 16. Played East St. Louis here, and lost in the sectional title game. But to get to the title game, we beat Highlands in the sectional semifinals, which is always nice. But that was a little extra sweet because it was the fourth time I remember we had played them that year. We were 0-3, and I don't think any of the three were particularly close. I mean, I think they were all, you know, 8, 9, 10 points, and you know, just ones where, you know, we didn't play bad against them, but we were always just kind of right there and couldn't get over the hump. And then that night, like, everything went well. I think Sean Winstryer hit like 7 or 8 threes that night, and it went from a close game at halftime to I think we beat him by 25 or 30 points. And so that was a lot of fun. Just that week was a blast. The sectional was here, so the gym was packed every night. Our fans were all over the place. They were great. So that was probably by far my top one here in Mascoutah. All
right, let's go back to golf. What's your favorite golf moment been so far?
Probably winning the regional. So that was a few years ago now, 2023, I guess it was. So we, you know, I think it was the first regional title in 28 years, I think, whenever we won it. And just, it was one of those things that we knew going into it, we had a chance. Like, we had been playing well as the season progressed, and like our tournament scores were getting lower and lower, and we kind of had a conversation. I remember, you know, a few days before the regionals, we talked, you know, we sat down and talked and said, hey, like, here's the number I think we need to be at to have a chance. And, you know, teams that we had been close with all year, and I said everybody kind of put it together, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. So.
All right, most sports, they've got middle school programs that kind of feed into the high school one. Do you have any plans to start in the middle school program at any point?
I would like to. You know, I've talked with Mrs. Hazard over at the middle school and Mr. Battis here, just kind of, you know, of what would be needed and just kind of the schedule and the timing of when it falls. You know, for middle school golf, a lot of it falls during the spring, which is nice for me. You know, I wouldn't have anything going on if they wanted, you know, if I needed to help out with it or do anything I could to kind of help get it going. But from a development standpoint, obviously it's huge. I know that a lot of schools, like over like the Clinton County area, like they're starting middle school programs, and you know, there's different tournaments and things that kids get in. But yeah, like, it's certainly something that, you know, again, you want to build the program as much as possible. The best way to do that is obviously have a feeder program, if you will, and you know, have kids coming into the program that kind of know your expectations and, you know what they're going to be getting into and are familiar with the coaches. Like, that just helps build things and kind of gets you more continuity, you know, as the years go. So.
All right, what would you tell someone? What are some reasons that you would give to someone who's on the fence about playing golf?
I mean, it's the best there is. You know, like, I think it's the unique one of, there are very few high school sports that, you know, when you're playing them in high school, that you can say, hey, this is something that I can enjoy and I can do for the rest of my life. You know, like, you know, guys that, you know, as a basketball coach for a long time, like, you know, most people, like, they're not going and playing basketball, you know, during the summer, you know, in their summers and stuff, and their weekends, they don't go and play basketball for 3 or 4 hours, and, you know, you just don't have that in football and baseball and everything else. But golf is something that you can pick up. It's something you can do forever. It's a great way to, get out with friends, to get out with family, whether it's parents, grandparents, whoever. It's just a great way to get a lot of memories. And if you really get hooked on it, like I have, obviously, over the years, I mean, it can take you a lot of places. Obviously, there's all kinds of trips and courses and just beautiful places you can go do it at. And again, it's a great way to start in high school. And obviously, you get a lot of free golf for 4 years, so that's never a bad thing.
How's coaching golf different from coaching any other sport?
I don't yell as much, so
I do remember you telling Greg Adams that first year that you're not going to yell at him as much as you did.
I'm a little
basketball.
more, I'd say I'm more calm. Obviously, it's just a different demeanor you have to have. Basketball, you have nights where maybe just something's off, and you can kind of get on the guys a little bit, say you're not playing harder, and you got to pick it up, and on the course, you don't sit there and say you got to golf harder, like you got to, but it's a different aspect for sure in that. It's a lot more mental, and just you kind of have to, you want to do everything you can on the golf course to make sure that I think your players are calm and focused on what they're doing, not caught up in any extracurricular stuff. And like I said, basketball is just a little more intensity to it. There's that direct, like where you're competing against the guy across from you in basketball, whoever's guarding you or you're guarding or whatever. Obviously, when it's on the golf course, it's you by yourself. So the mental aspect of it is a lot more of a factor there.
That actually ties right in. So when you're at a match with your players, are you more of a mechanical, like having to fix mechanics of a golf game, or are you kind of helping with the mental game?
During the match, I'd say a lot more mental. I think from my perspective, the last thing you want is your players sitting there trying to tinker with their swing in the middle of a match, and then, it might work out for one or two shots, but, it can go awry quickly, when you start changing what you've always done. And, we talk with our guys a lot about just like repetition, is what builds success, in any sport, but especially golf. There's thousands and thousands of shots, and practicing what you're doing and being comfortable with it. So putting all these different swing thoughts in their head, I'm not a fan of. I think it's more of, talking through shots with them, what's your plan here, what do you see, and just kind of making sure, again, that they're kind of mentally focused and playing smart golf, I guess you could say.
All right, last one. What is your favorite course to go to during the golf season? And you cannot say Pinehurst. You don't play there for high school.
Probably St. Clair Country Club. We finish up there with the Althoff Crusader Classic, and a couple reasons. Like it's a beautiful course. I mean, it's probably by far the most well-maintained course we play on. Obviously, it's a private country club. Coach Politis over there and Althoff, they do a great job of putting it on. And so not only do you have the great course, but it is literally some of the best teams in the state. I mean, this year, we had our best tournament of the year. We shot 299 there. And, we were able to beat, teams like Edwardsville and some, schools that are very, very good programs. But, you have schools like Breeze Mater Dei and Effingham St. Anthony, who is, coming into this year was the 3-time defending state champion. So it's great competition. And, it gives our kids a chance. It's right at the end of the season before regionals, and it gives them a chance to, like, really play against some great competition on a good course. So that's a good way to end the year, and definitely something I look forward to every year.
All right, Coach, thanks so much for your time, and well, I was going to say good luck, but your season's over, so, but thanks so much for your time.
No problem. Glad to come on.
When we come back, we'll wrap things up here on Inside Indian Athletics.
My team and I are independent financial advisors that help families with their investment, retirement, and wealth management goals. Our mission is to provide premier financial services. Community financial advisors assist clients in making educated decisions about their future by providing a wide range of financial and investment planning services.
To contact your local financial advisor, Matt Schroeder, call 618-607-8066. For any additional information, visit communityfinancial.com.
That's going to do it for us here tonight on Inside Indian Athletics. We do apologize that we couldn't get girls coach MaryAnn Kolda on tonight, but she was not able to be with us. But that is going to do it. We do have a couple of stuff this week. We've got girls basketball going on later tonight down in Cahokia, and we will have girls basketball on Thursday. However, that game, unfortunately, will not be on the Indian Sports Network. But starting next week, it's girls and boys basketball. Basketball season is here, and you can catch all home games and select road games right here on the Indian Sports Network. For now, that's going to do it. Thanks so much to Coach Reynolds, Avery Beer behind the camera. My name is Owen Dessler, and we will see you next week.